Thank you for joining me on the Who God Says podcast. I am your host and Kingdom Ambassador, Ty-Shaun-Dra. Hi, hi, hi.
What up, what up, what up?
Oh my God. Today we have a very special guest. She is an inner child liberator and a somatic coach. Miss Amanda Curry, welcome.
Girl, did I give you that word, liberator? Because that's what's going to start going on the Instagram, the marketing, all the thing. Inner child liberator. Good gracious! I almost cursed on your podcast. I was so excited about that. So thank you for that. Thank you for that introduction.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to have you.
Mm-hmm.
We got things to dive into.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, liberator. Yes. When I read through your story and everything, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. So I added a little tidbit, but it's okay, right?
No, I mean it's more than okay. Like that's a game changer. That will be I'm probably gonna have to put your name underneath all of my marketing, like inspo by Ty.
It's okay.
Yeah,
It's
all good.
all right.
Mm-hmm. I'm here to receive.
Okay, I want to ask you, how did you grow up? Like, what was your childhood like? And what are your spiritual beliefs?
Yeah, such a loaded question.
You
So,
can
I am just under 40. We won't get into the specifics, but I'm just under 40. So I grew up in that generation of, a lot of us went to church, went through the motions. I did have friends. I went to Catholic school, K through 12. I imagine that this is pretty consistent throughout most of Catholicism, although my husband went to Catholic schools and he had a completely different youth group experience. That like we were all about like the works, the acts, the things. And then after that, it was like, is that it? We're good. Okay, we'll go home. Let's just go back to the house. So there wasn't a lot of substance to what I grew up with. And it was definitely, the church and school was the only time that I was getting any sort of discussion or influence in regards to religion or spirituality. So there was a lot of other things going on in the house. So that was not a one that was going to take a priority. And so I grew up, but in a, upper middle class family. I'm one of two. I have a brother. Mental health was a struggle within our family. And I felt like that was pretty much the front seat of my child and adolescence. I'm making up all new words today. And so really that created in me this need to achieve, to control and expect, as a way to feel safe and survive on an emotional level. My upbringing wasn't intuitively unsafe. It wasn't that, anyone was abusing me in a physical sense. But it was one that was really hard to navigate. Not having a lot of modeling of what it was like to feel, what it was like to connect with anything, either internally or externally, in the form of like a higher power. So I was really left to my own devices in regards to that, which led me down a very interesting path in late adolescence, into high school, and then early into college. It wasn't until I met my now husband that he and his Jesus loving people just kind of did just that. They just loved on me and let me be in what I was going to be in. And I was just brought to where I am today. And then some. So that was pretty much my upbringing in a nutshell.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. So you said that you went to Catholic school. So school and church was the only type of religious structure you had. And it kind of became mundane, right? It was like, okay, I know I have to go because I have to go to school. I know at this time we have to be at church. So that's why it wasn't that substance there. It was more of like a chore, something that has to be done because it's required, and that's what we just do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was going through the motions. And of course, like I was an altar server, I was involved with choir, but it was a means of like not connecting, and more of a doing, a being a
Yeah.
face, doing all the right things. So I mean, I guess I didn't answer your second question of my spirituality or religious. I had none, I had
Mm.
none. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until late into college, mid college, that I had my awakening per se, the first
Wow.
iteration of my awakening. And then in the last 5 years, not complete undoing of all that I was, um, exposed to and was
Hmm.
revealed to me early in those college years. But in the last 5 years, with the deep healing that I've done, I feel a somewhat completely different connection to God
Yeah.
and spirit and to my religion, in a way that feels more spiritual, but also feels deeply connected to
Yeah.
source, to a religious. There was a time and place where that was birthed from that I can't,
Hmm.
completely disregard.
Yeah.
So there are those little like tentacles of religion that are spread about what I contribute to be in my beliefs.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved about like your podcast and coming on here is everybody's experience is so different
Yep.
that it's like a fingerprint. Everybody's interpretation and how they experience is so unique, and that's
Yeah.
absolutely what I love and what I'm excited to share about more today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that you shared about um just going to Catholic school and going to church and about it being just a religious practice. It's just something we do because a lot of people don't understand they're doing all the things, but they're internally their whole heart, their sincerity is not in it. So not to say that people being fooled, it's just that they have not tapped into what what is my full connection with the Holy Spirit? What does that
Yeah.
feel like?
Yeah.
What does
Yeah. And
that sound like? Mhm.
yes, absolutely. And what's interesting about that is I can reflect back to times when I was in specifically music related. So in chorus, singing for our graduation, I would feel these sensations. And I now know because of the work that I do, the somatic work that I do, what that was.
Mhm.
I would at times I would feel these pulls, which is like the Holy Spirit, but
Yeah.
no one was talking about it. And no one, you kind of looked around to be like, did anybody else feel that? Because I
Right.
felt that. And historically speaking, white people, we don't let the spirit move us very much. And so it's one of those things where it was like I also felt very lost, even
Mhm.
in the true experiences that I was having as a child and a young adult. I was like, I don't know what to do with this because no one was
Yeah.
talking about it. And so
Yeah.
that's an interesting piece, is that I don't feel like I was completely dead on the inside, but anything that did light up, it was like it dissipated very quickly because it felt
Yeah.
as though I was the only one experiencing that.
Yeah. You didn't want to be that outsider.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, I can't just be the only one feeling this. Maybe something wrong. I'm just
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
when you don't
God.
have that developed sense of self, that's very
Mhm.
hard. There's very few young adults. I mean, this current generation is very like oriented to self. So that's why I think you see more of the younger generation being like, "Oh yeah, no, this is just me. Like I am
Yeah.
moved right now, or I am passionate about this." But in, us millennials, we were still trying to kind of figure out. We were a little bit ahead of the game, but it was something that just wasn't readily available to talk about, or that people were just openly sharing, and that you could kind of even get a glimpse of that. In fact, what's interesting about that is the thread that ties all of this together is that feeling. For the first time in college, I got dragged to my husband's friends. He worked at a church camp. Not only did he go through K through 12, he was not Catholic. His mom was a Methodist minister.
Okay.
They were big into church camp, like loved it. They were all best friends, and they would go to these like parties, um, for these different occasions. They would all get together. And the first time that I saw what I felt inside externally shown to me through a
Mhm.
person, I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
That what she's doing right now, that's what I feel. And I want more of that. And
Yeah.
was the catalyst for, and that permission for everything that unfolded a decade or so later. So
Yeah,
it's been a journey for sure.
that's beautiful. Yay. Well, I'm so glad you had that experience. Can you tell us about leading up to that? Like what did you kind of slip into when you said you went from just that super religious, super um on point, this is the requirement, to let me try something else or disregard? What happened during that time?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think a lot of what I experienced growing up just became magnified as I got older. And
Hmm.
so I just, throughout my high school and college experience, early college experience, felt completely empty and lost. And
Mm,
just this bottomless hole of like shame and just, why am I the way that I am? Why do I think what I think? Why am I so hard on myself? Why do I feel like, what's funny is my name is Amanda, which means, I don't know in what language, but it means lovable. And yet
hmm.
I had spent my entire life feeling unlovable. And so I just,
Oh,
this whole like question of like, what is all this from? And like, I'm ready to move on and move through it. And so really it was that turning point of that girl standing up and swaying and closing her eyes and really being led that allowed me to like keep looking for what was next, what was that thing. And so through a series of reading books and listening to podcasts, and I got connected to what really was like the beginning of knowing who God was, what
yeah.
God could do in my life, who Jesus was. You know, I knew all of
Yeah.
these people as caricatures, but I didn't know their
Mm,
impact within my life. And
yeah.
so, you know, I started to let that like infuse into my system, and it felt like it broke me, because to take in the knowing and the awareness that there is this entity out there that accepts me fully
Yeah.
in my mess was very foreign to me, because I didn't feel fully accepted in my mess, even for myself.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of emotion that came up from that for a long period of time, of just of releasing and crying and emoting this, what I needed for the last, because I was probably 21 or 22 when all of this started to like unfold. And so for 2 decades, I had questioned like my worth and my value and
Yeah.
like, am I lovable? And so to have all of this in a very flashpoint moment come through is like,
Oh,
oh,
yes.
okay, I need to catch a breath. And so that was the beginning of like, I would say like, you know, my awakening, rebirth,
Yeah.
whatever story. I didn't necessarily like, you know, in a pool and get baptized and all of that, you know, stuff and
Hmm.
dove singing. But it was where I knew that I now had that connection that other people actually also had, and what true
Yes.
connection to God and source and all of that was. And so for probably 4 or 5 years, like did all the devotional. I almost like was those like born again Christian where I was doing all the like small groups and like great wonderful things and reading my Bible, and that filled me
Yeah.
to a point.
Hmm.
And then it was that transition point of like, okay, but some of this stuff is still coming up. You know, like
Hmm.
some of this like residue of before is resurfacing. So there's a little bit of like a, oh, what do I do with this? You know? And that is where the second stage of my healing and this metamorphosis took place.
Yeah. I love it. I want to tell you what your name means.
What does it mean?
So, um, so Latin means to love. Hebrew is beloved or worthy of love.
Oh, what a
So the name,
contrast, right?
the
Yeah.
name that God gave you.
Yeah.
It is funny how we we get stuck in this one thing and it drives us completely throughout our lives. It might be one moment where we didn't feel that we had the love that we wanted. And it's crazy that what God already spoke over you.
Mm-hmm.
You're worthy of love. You didn't know that you had that. You didn't know that you could feel that. You didn't know that that's who you were. But God already told you that's who you were. But that ain't it funny that that's the very thing that you struggled with?
Right. And to that point, what I would love, this is part of the passion. This is where I'm gonna have to like reel myself back, because
Go ahead.
this is
Go ahead.
where I think that the 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 intersectionality of that truth and that belief with your own ownership of your healing work. So
Mm-hmm.
if I would have never have leaned into or discovered the somatic work and the inner child healing that I do now, I would have never been able to clear the beliefs to get to what God had already put about. So like God, like he asks, he requires, he begs of you to be an active participant of your life, which means
Mm-hmm.
to heal the blocks that are keeping him from you. And so what I
Yes.
mean by that
Yes.
is that the unlovableness that I found, like I will tell you this, of all the things that I have worked through with my parents, the one thing that I never doubted from them is that they loved me. So it's not that
Mm-hmm.
I was getting this energy from them that you are unlovable. But what I have learned and what I have felt into through breathwork journeys and a variety of healing work is that what I am healing is generational. It
Yeah.
is my mom's mom that was adopted and given away. It was my mom's
Mm-hmm.
dad that was completely like blackballed by his family. So
Mm-hmm.
that was carried on, that was unhealed, is now mine to heal and to like state claim that like we're not going to go any longer in this. And so
Yeah.
that is the new age of like where I'm at in my spirituality of like, yeah, God is there and has done so much and has declared so much, but it is for me to carry out that and to reflect that and to give life to that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. I love it. Now,
I love that you
what
looked
are
that
some
up.
of the
Thank you for
things?
that.
No problem. When I hear it, I have to say it. And I
Yeah,
feel these things, and I just give God all the praise. Sometimes I don't even know what's coming out. I just know that my mouth is moving.
absolutely.
It happens like that a lot.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that your father and mother did that you carried into adulthood and even parenting with your own kid? What are some of those things that you can kind of pinpoint and say, yeah,
Are we talking positive or negative? Which one are we doing here?
both, both, both.
um, so I very much, um, through a lot of reflection, I have been
Mm-hmm.
able to have a different perspective of the things that my parents did and how they have come to light in a positive way. And I've
Mm-hmm.
been able to, through my healing, shift a little bit of that to optimize it. But I
Yeah.
always loved that my mom said to me, Amanda, you can do anything that you put your mind to.
Mm-hmm.
Point blank. She would say that over and over and over again. Now, my disconnect with us is that she would say that to me, but I could energetically feel that she didn't feel that about herself. And so
Oh,
there was that sticking point and that piece of me that got to be healed over these last 5 years. But I love that, like, that is what's brought me to a lot of the success that I have, is that voice that says you can do anything that you put your mind to. Now that I
yeah.
have healed the inner critic that says, are you sure that that's possible? And
Wow.
so that's one thing from mom. The other thing from dad is, and I didn't really know a lot about him and his upbringing, because he's just kind of a closed book. By the way, this is not a plug, I do not get paid for this, but Storyworth, if you
Mm-hmm.
ever want to give a gift that will just keep giving, it is a great idea. It's essentially like you send a family member or friend, it could be anybody,
Mm-hmm.
these questions and they'll answer them. And then at the end of the year, I think it combines it into a book and then it gives it to you. So
Oh,
something that I did that for my dad one year for Christmas, and through reading through his book, there was this thread of like, there's no reason. He works for NASA. He's a metallurgical engineer and quite brilliant. But there's no reason why a boy from rural Iowa with 10 other
wonderful.
brothers and sisters should have been in the path that he was in. And I think that what I realized, even though he never said anything to me about this, but it was just like an energetic feel, is that like you just show up and things happen. And you
Mm.
don't ask, why am I here? You just say, I'm here.
Sounds like
And I think
good.
that is something that really energetically on a low key level has just allowed me to step into spaces that people would be like, what are you doing right now? and just to show up and not to run stuff, but just to show up and be a part of it. And what unravels, because there are lots of spaces, lots of rooms that I don't necessarily have the merit to be in, but I got in the room and things have very much panned out because of them. And so I would say that those are the two biggest things. And I hope, and I do see myself doing that for my own children, is that my kids watch me do crazy stuff and take chances. And they also get to see me be their biggest cheerleaders of like, you can do anything that you want to do. I do not have to determine that, nor does anyone else. You get to determine that.
That's awesome.
Hi, everyone. Join the Kingdom Fanatics community. Get exclusive content, green room access with our guests, and more. Visit our website at whogodsays.com. Like and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We greatly appreciate your love and support. To find all information on joining our community, being a guest on the show, donating on our PayPal donation page, and more, visit us at whogodsays.com. Now back to the show.
Yes. There were like two big things that I took from. I took my mom would always say what's on your mind. Don't let anybody quiet you down.
That's awesome.
Say what's on your mind. Now, I will say, I did say what's on my mind a lot, and I got in trouble for it. But, she probably needed to polish it and say what's on your mind respectfully.
Yeah, the polishing can always come later. I think it's easier to polish than it is to give somebody permission to start talking again. So I would do the way that you did it any day and twice on Sunday.
Yeah. So that was a big thing. My mom would always say always say what's on your mind. Always say what's on your mind. Don't let anybody quiet you down. So that was one of the big things that I took from my mom. And my dad was a big cheerleader of mine. He don't make me cry. He was a big cheerleader of mine, but he was this guy who, what I've learned that I didn't know previously about my dad was, he was a big community guy. He loved to take care of everybody. So he's that guy that needs to take care of everybody. And as a kid, I didn't understand it. I was like, that's not gonna work for me. Like,
right.
There would be like somebody who needed somewhere to sleep. They would be on our sofa. There would be someone who like he fed the neighborhood 2-3 times a week, and I'm like, what are we supposed to eat when our food run out? Things like that.
Yeah.
I didn't know as a child that was just who God had made him. That's something that I actually needed to see, because I'm not gonna lie, I was a selfish child. And the reason why I was selfish is because I was the oldest in the house, and I had to share everything with the ones who were younger with me. Everything, even down to my clothes. So it was like, I want something that's just for me. So if I was not exposed to the type of person that my dad was, I probably would be one of these selfish, just self-centered, egotistical, prideful people that just think the world revolves around them. So I needed to see the things that my dad was doing. And even though I didn't understand it then, I started to understand it as I got older. And even having opportunities where people would ask me about staying in my house. No, you're not staying in my house. But as I got older, I started to really understand it. And so, those are the things that I took from my parents. My mom she would always say, do not let anybody quiet you down. Always say what's on your mind. And my dad was just this giver person. He had to be there. And I would joke with him about when he was dating. I would joke with him about him. He always would date women with children. And I'm like, why you can't find a single woman that don't have any kids? Like, But he just had to be there. And that was just his character. He had to be there. And he loved children too.
I love
He
that.
had to be there.
They sound like great people.
Oh my gosh. They're crazy people.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all? One thing
Yeah.
I cannot, speaking up, one thing I cannot let go though is, obviously if you maintain that, selfish mind, that viewpoint as an adult, that would be one thing. But as children, like that's what that's self-preservation. Like we want connection, and we don't know that if that's given out to others that we're going to get it. And so it's a natural inclination. That's why kids are like my toy, because that's all that they know. And so it's one of those things that it was very developmentally appropriate for you to have those feelings of like, well, what about us? And what about me? And like, it's just a general concern. And so it's, I want to give you permission to have that story and not have any sort of shame attached to it.
I was a hoot. I would tell him, "What are you doing? We need that food. Like, why are you giving it away?" He's like, "Be quiet, child." You always tell me, "Be quiet, child." Now it was so conflicted. My daddy told me, "Be quiet, child," but my mama said, "Don't let nobody quiet you down." So it was just back and forth. I got in trouble a lot with my mouth. Yeah, I got in trouble a lot. I want to ask you, what is mom rage? Where did you come up with that term? Like, what is that? And did you recognize it within yourself, or did you recognize it in someone else?
Well, I did not coin the term mom rage. I wish I did. I don't actually know who coined that term. However, I've always had a little bit of a fire within me. I don't necessarily know that more growing up was, just energy, excitement, being extroverted. Like that was kind of my fire. I had a lot of fire modeled to me from my mom. But it wasn't until and I would more consider myself passionate before it turned to rage. And so rage and anger, I didn't really consider myself an angry person ever. But I remember exactly where I was driving. And I remember I looked at the clock, and it had the date next to it. And it was literally 6 months to the day that I had after I had my first kid. And I felt within my body the most rage that I've ever felt in my life for really no reason. It was this like huge fire within that I could have just like cut glass with my teeth. I could have like picked up a car and thrown it across. And that was my first introduction to rage in the form of like the hormone version. So I, through having kids and, all of the things that go on change wise, both before you have your child and then postpartumly, there's a lot that goes on within your body and a lot of new sensations and emotions and a lot of new levels of awareness and thresholds and bandwidths that change and ebb and flow. And so for me, that was kind of the pivotal step of, I think on a certain level, this combination of hormonal changes plus a lack of control in my life, because I now had this child that I was tending to all the time. And so, and there was a post that was floating around. It was Carousel that talked about how much like type A high achieving moms struggle postpartumly. And a lot of that struggle comes out as anger and anxiety because we have always had it together and we have always planned it out. And everything about being a mother and having a child is unplanned and unpredictable, or to a point. You can do the sleep schedule and that can be good for like 5 out of the 7 days, but then what about the other 2? And so I think a lot of that really wrecked my nervous system, because when things were out of place or out of line, I never knew how to respond to that. And so it was for the first 2 years of his childhood, really, actually, no, 5 years of his. I didn't find this work until he was 5 and Kennedy was 2. And so it was a lot of rage was a byproduct after the hormones had kind of subsided, was a byproduct of my nervous system being completely whacked out, like just I was at here, and then I was adding a screaming toddler, and it sent me over the edge. And so that is very much in the clients that I support. A lot of what they come to me for is like, I am so reactive and frustrated with my children. And I'm like, yeah, you get to be overwhelmed and overwhelmed and frustrated, but the reactivity is something that we can alter. And
Yes.
it's something that is very passionate to me, because a lot of the down spiral that created this opportunity for this kind of shift in my religious and spiritual life is that, like, I was then having shame mounted on top of this overwhelm and on top of this rage. And so then we were back to square one. My Zoom does that all the time. I'm sorry, but thumbs up to that too. Anyways, and so that really was the genesis of getting to the root of my mom rage, which ultimately I found through inner child work and somatic healing. So it is something that everyone struggles with, whether you are a mom or a dad. I think moms just maybe have a little bit more of a heightened, bandwidth for that rage. Or a lot of women, they don't even know how to access that rage because they have been quieted. Because if you make a sound, I'll give you something to make a sound about. And so it's bringing those two together of like, where can we be in this like grounded state and express things from a really like heart-centered space that isn't projecting. That's one that's, we can model healthy anger and passion and frustration without it being something that's harmful to us or others.
Yeah. What are some of the things you can do to kind of, well, if you had to put, I ain't gonna actually give away all your tips, but just like one main thing that could probably help us identify the mom rage, what would it be?
Well, I think most people are pretty aware of when they're there. Like, they're either the bottle has been shook and they are grinding their teeth and their jaw is so tight that they are keeping it all together, or they have already erupted and the cap has popped off.
Yeah.
Another way that I would offer from that question as like a piggyback is like, what's the first thing to do when that happens? Or what is the game changer in really changing the trajectory of how you respond to your kids? And I said this on another podcast recently, is there can be no change or healing that occurs that is transformational and long-standing if you cannot love that version of yourself.
Yeah.
If you cannot give that version of yourself grace and compassion, that version of you showed up in a stress response, and that version of you is in pattern right now, nothing else can happen.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, nothing.
Yeah.
Because I can give you all the tips and let's go do some breath work. But if you have shame about that version of you, then there's very little else that we can do apart from grounding you back to homeostasis. Then all we're doing is a loop. We're doing a cycle of behavior of like Band-Aid, and then we have the thing, and then Band-Aid, and then we have the thing. And so that radical compassion, that radical self-love is really numero uno when it comes to identifying and healing mom rage.
Ooh. The craziest thing is you can be in mom rage for years. And not really...
I was, for like 5 years. And it's mom rage that can come out to your kids. But a lot of our thing is we don't want to put it out on our kids. So then who's next?
Yeah.
Our partner.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I realized I was not just acting because I was angry. This was probably about 2 years ago. The crazy thing about God is that I went through this. I had to actually go through it. I had to come to the realization, and he sent me that revelation of what I was actually doing. And then we had to combat that and fix it and come out on the other side. And then here I go, I find you. And I was like, well, where was she when I was going through the
Right. You gotta figure it out. That's him saying, you gotta figure this out on your own, and then I'll give you some little pebbles along the way afterwards. Yeah. But you gotta make the first step yourself.
I have backup. See, now I have backup.
Yeah, but, absolutely.
I actually had a fight with my 17-year-old, a physical fight. And I said, this is something that could never happen again. And it was like, I understand, like, yeah, you got mad, but when I felt that feeling, it was totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I have, I have never gotten to this point ever.
Mm-hmm.
There's something different here.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. And
something
it's
that's
that,
actually different. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And that's the thing is that, so that's that white hot rage. That's the one
Mm-hmm.
that like you were disassociated. You aren't actually in your body, because if you were in your body and present, the things that you say and do would have never happened. So
Yeah.
the thing about that is, and what I had to learn as well, is that there are emotional signposts. There are energetic places where you're like, I'm at a 2, I'm at a 7,
Mm-hmm.
I'm at a nine and
Mm-hmm.
a half, and now we're at
Mm-hmm.
a 15. And so the
Yes.
goal is that you along the way get to bring yourself back down so that you don't get to that, because everybody has the potential to get
Yep.
to that
Yep.
100%. And so
Yep.
it's about like teaching and training yourself to have this deeper awareness. It's called interoception. So you're noticing what's going on within your body. Like, oh, I have not just like, oh, I have a headache, or oh, I'm tired, but like, ooh, I have this twinge that's like feels tighter behind my jaw now that wasn't here this morning. And
Yeah.
then, ooh, I'm now noticing that like I'm standing here and my heart rate is actually going up, and my
Mm-hmm.
not inner child, inner critic is like really like turned up right now. So it's that
Yeah.
sensing of your internal environment that allows you to course correct before you go to, DEFCON 5.
Yeah. It was definitely DEFCON 5.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, I've always heard that, your teenagers, they're going to try you, especially teenage girls and all that kind of things. I was like, well, no, because I feel like I create a space with my kids that I want them to talk to me about things. So
Mm-hmm.
ever since the incident, and it's crazy. After it happened, I did apologize, but I just kept hearing in my head, you can be angry, do not sin. You can be angry, do not sin. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I have that rage is what takes people to things that they would never in their right
Mm-hmm.
mind do. And so I used to have it where, yeah, we have times where we'll talk and I'll talk to my kids and let them express themselves. So now, ever since that happened, we have implemented like a safe space. If you want to talk, we can talk. If you want to write it down, you can write it down. Sometimes people feel better writing it down instead of saying it out loud. Um, and I allow them time to say what it is that they think they wouldn't otherwise be able to say. Um, in a respectful way and not with a lot of emotions coming out and you know you may say something the wrong way and then now mom's mad again. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was one of the things that I started to do with them, a safe space, just to make sure that they understand that I'm here, I hear them, I see everything that you're doing, I hear you, I understand you, let's make it work together. And hopefully that'll be something that they will you know do with their kids, because we didn't have that growing up. It was
Right. Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. There was
it was
more like,
because
this
I
is a
said
one-way
so.
street. This is not a two-way street. Yeah. And what I love that you bring up about that is the safe space. And so an integral part to that, whether you are communicating with a child or a partner, is checking in and getting consent first of your kids in saying like, hey, I need a safe space right now. You really being honest and checking in with, do I have the bandwidth for this?
Yeah.
Do I have the capacity to be with this in a non-triggered, non-threatening state? Because if you have had a trying day and you're tired, your bandwidth is going to be low. So you owe
Yeah.
it to your kid or your partner, whoever, family member, whoever, to really honor where you're at. And it says nothing about the fact that I can't do this now, but can you give me 2 hours? I'm about to go on a walk. Or like,
Yeah.
can we talk about this tomorrow morning when I'm not super tired? Whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um, and something, I mean, even more to an extreme, which we have talked about in the form of couples, but not with kids. And so everybody gets to have their full autonomy if they want to give this reign and freedom to their kids. But there's something called holding the bucket that we teach on
Mm.
and
Okay.
that I've been taught on. And then that I also teach to the clients that I have. And it is just that, I told you earlier before we started filming that I'm coming off of a stomach bug. And so what do you do when you have a stomach bug? You are holding the bucket, like you are vomiting into the bucket. And so sometimes you need somebody to hold back your hair and to let you be in the mess. And so what this looks like is, again, asking consent. And again, from a partner standpoint, I'll do that. Actually, you know what? From a kid standpoint, actually, I'll do that. Is
Okay.
a kid comes to you and say, "Hey mom, can you hold the bucket for me? I've got to get some stuff off my chest." And this is more unfiltered for them. So this is them like unloading, and you literally just letting them have that safe space of unloading without anything being done or fixed or ever being brought up. And so they can, again, within the realms of boundaries of respectfulness, but like they can really call it out, not just like, "Hey mom, I really want to go to this party on Friday night. I'll make sure that I'm home by blah, blah, blah. And I'll make sure that I'm riding with somebody." No, this is like, "Hey mom, I'm so frustrated because at school, I feel like my teachers don't ever listen to me and I'm always trying to ask questions. And then I get home and you're always busy with the other ones and you won't ever listen to me either. And I feel like no one's listening to me and all I want to do is be heard. And this is so frustrating to me. And I just feel like, why am I even here? Why am I even here? If nobody," and they just get to go and you just get to say, "What else? Tell me more. What else?" And so they get to like fully feel through whatever emotion that they're in, again, either partner or child, so that they can come out on the other side and y'all can just move forward.
Yeah.
And that is something where it doesn't have to be this, antiquated script of, I'm playing nice. Like some people they just need to puke into the bucket because they are so stuffed full of everything that they have kept bottled up for the last week, day, whatever it has been.
Yeah.
So that is a really, really powerful tool that really tests the person that's receiving, but also the receiver as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yes, because you got to sit there and you got to take it.
Yeah. And not let it energetically, like you have to have that boundary of like, I'm witnessing this person. I'm not fixing. I'm not defending myself. I'm literally letting this being be themselves and witness them in this compassion and this love.
Yeah. And then you show your self-control and also not getting on a defensive. A lot of times things happen because people get on the defensive. They want to, well, I didn't say, just calm down and let them say what they need to say. Sometimes people just need to know that you're here to listen.
I mean, and can you imagine, like, now that I'm thinking of it, like, God must have to hold the bucket a lot. Can you imagine, like, if we all put our prayers on last week, dude, I can't believe, and nothing's going right, and I can't believe, and what is he doing? He's just like, yep, or they, it, whatever you believe. Like, what else do you need to say?
Yeah, well, that happened this morning because I was like, "Oh Lord, please forgive me for complaining."
Right? But I think that there's a level, like there's a level of that's allowed, that's permitted. Like he wants that, like that vulnerability and rawness from your heart space of like, tell me what it is for you right now. I already know, but like, tell me what it is.
Yeah. Oh my God. Can you tell us what a somatic coach is?
Yeah. So I've touched on this, a little bit throughout this as we chatted, but really a somatic coach is one that a lot of people are probably hearing the word somatic, and maybe it's with breath work or maybe it's with yoga. But it really just, it encompasses all of your beingness. So your beingness in a physical sense, your body, your beingness in your mind, and a beingness in your like soul level. And so much of what we have tackled in what people struggle with mainstream is in the mind. We have done years and decades of this, cognitive based thinking it out, talking it out. And that has gotten us to a point. And this whole somatic wave that is going on is people are starting to feel again, and they're starting to lean on the feeling and the soul level awareness that is present when you connect all of that together. And so the somatic work that I do does all three, is that it allows your intuition and your soul to be the guide. I am not your guide. I'm just a facilitator of the space.
Yeah.
And I do help you get into your body, reclaim your body for a lot of people. And then again, most of us are really good at the thinking and the mind part. And so you usually don't need a whole lot of tweaking with that. There may be some perspective shifts that we have during our coaching, but that somatic experience can happen in a variety of ways. It can be in the modality and the tool that I use and guide people through. It can be through breath work that I take people through. It can be through yoga. It can be through different movement practices. It can be through music. It can be a variety of ways if all of those three things are synergistically aligning and lighting up in that system.
Yeah. Okay. Sort of like the what is it called? The trend word holistic, the holistic being, the holistic approach to it. Okay.
I also love to, again, what's coming up for me is the triune type thing. It has so many like spiritual aspects to it. And what I also love is that the clients that I have, like with somatic healing and somatic work, anybody that believes anything that is part of any religion, like your soul is your soul. So it's whatever you believe, you bring into that space, whatever that higher power is or none, you bring into that space. And so I love that there hasn't been this, in my opinion, this created silo of like, oh, well, none of the Christians can do any sort of somatic work. You know what I mean? Like only the atheist and those that are agnostic can do this. And so I love that it feels very inclusive and that all types of people have been open and felt comfortable accessing this type of tool.
That's good. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Good. Well, if they don't know anything about Christ, he was all inclusive.
Right? Co-sign on that.
He was all inclusive. It doesn't matter who you were, what you did, what you looked like, what you didn't have, what you had. He was all inclusive. And just a little side note for everybody.
Just a little cliff note for you.
Amanda, can you tell the people where they can get in touch with you? Anything you have coming up or anything like that?
Yeah, so I am currently full for one-on-one clients. I do offer one-on-one coaching, somatic coaching. I do group breathwork sessions, both virtually or in person if you're in the Memphis area. And I am super excited because my birthday is May 11th. And so for starting May 1st to May 11th, I am launching a 6-pack bundled breathwork and meditation recording series. So many people are like, I can't do the Tuesday nights. I can't do Sunday nights. I don't really want I can't do a full hour. And so this is going to be anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes of guided meditation and breath work that you can take and tailor to your day. So if you are feeling as though you are not tapping into your body, then there is a meditation for that. If you are having mom rage and frustration and anger, there is a meditation for that. So I'm super excited about that. It's also only $38 until May 11th, which it's valued at over $150. So after the 11th, it'll jump in price. And then after June, it will jump in price again. Okay. But if you need any of those details, or want to get in touch with me or have questions about this podcast, really the biggest platform, the easiest way to get in touch with me is Instagram. I am the somatic DPT, D as in David, P as in Paul, T as in Thomas. And that is my credentials as a physical therapist. That is what I'm trained in. And so you can find me there, the somatic DPT on Instagram.
Awesome. The last question I have for you is, what do you believe is your purpose?
Giving people permission for whatever it is that they need permission for. I find that if we're speaking more to women, that they get to have it all. There has been this like narrative that has been sidelined that we have to choose, and that if we're moms, we can't have this. And if we are single, we can't have this. And I just want to roll that back, because what your all is looks completely different to somebody else's, which looks completely different to somebody else's. And the notion that you have to have it all in the sense of 100% in each of those realms is also false. So like one day you can have all of your health, but it be 20% of your priority, but your emotional connection is now at an 80%. And it's this toggling notion that like you can have it all and you don't have to apologize for it either. And you don't have to apologize for wanting to have more or to have it all. And so just giving people permission for that, to just elevate their overall lived experience is really my passion, because I've done it and I know that it's possible, and I live a very full life. And so if I can do it, I know that anybody else can do it too.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that.
Yeah.
And when you said it, guess what I thought about? I thought about the Proverbs 31 wife.
Tell me. Read it to me.
Oh, can't read it all. It's long, but I'll just say this. A lot of times people feel guilty in one area or another about, hey, if I'm a businesswoman, I might be considered a bad mom or a bad wife or a bad this and that. The Proverbs 31 woman, she was completely whole. She was a businesswoman. She was a great wife. She took care of the home. She took care of the kids. She took care of the businesses. She was spiritually whole. She had it all. And I think we as women have been limited, mostly by people on the outside looking in, but definitely by ourselves, because we come across this point where we get into that shame or that that uncertainty where, can I have it all? And, is it supposed to be like this? But I always go back to the Bible. And the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. So if she can have it all, the Proverbs 31 woman, who every man says, oh, I need a Proverbs 31 wife. Well, then guess what? She had it all and I can too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing too is determining that like that all is not from an external sense. It's not I'm looking to her to see what all is.
Right.
I feel that wholeness now that I have resourced myself to this higher being, this guide. And so I think that's where the wholeness and the allness comes from, is not like, oh, I have it ticked off like what it looks like for this person. No, I didn't take a shower today. I put dry shampoo in my hair. I got to have it all. I got to have some extra time outside by my pool. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like you get to determine that. And I love that autonomy.
Yeah. I thank you so much. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun.
Oh my God. I love your story. Thank you so much for your talent. Any last words for the people before we let you go?
Keep listening and heeding that inner whisper. There's something else. Keep going. This is right. Ask that question. Go talk to that person. Like, that is what has gotten me to the point today. And that is nothing else but the Holy Spirit, just like pushing you along, inviting you in. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us today on the Who God Says podcast with your host and Kingdom Ambassador, Ty-Shaun-Dra. Go to whogodsays.com to join the mailing list for episode premieres, upcoming guests, and more. Send in your questions to be a part of the show at whogodsays@gmail.com. And don't forget, join the Kingdom Fanatic community. Until next time, be blessed and also be a blessing.